My sister pushed a basket of bread toward my son and said, "We didn't order anything for him." Her voice was calm, as if humiliation was just part of the menu. My dad laughed. "You should have brought something for him." Their children were eating expensive steaks while mine looked at the cold bread. I smiled and said one word, "Noted." All heads at the table turned. They thought it ended there. It didn't. What happened after that dinner didn't just change our family, it exposed everything we had been pretending not to see. Before I tell you how it unfolded, tell me where you are listening from so I know I am not the only person who had to draw a line with their family. When people ask what my family is like, I usually say we are complicated. It is easier than explaining the hierarchy I grew up in. My parents treated my sister, Nora, like glass and me like concrete. I was the stable one, the problem solver, the one they didn't have to worry about. Nora was the fragile one, the eternal project everyone felt they had to protect. As a child, I heard my mom say, "Camilla is strong. She doesn't need that much affection." I used to think strength was something to be proud of, but strength has a price. It means when you finally break, no one believes it is possible. I am 35 years old now. I am a single mom to a 9-year-old son named Parker. He is quiet and observant, the kind of child who notices everything but says very little. I work as an administrative coordinator at a private school. My days are made of emails, schedules, and parent meetings. It isn't glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps us safe. My parents live about 30 minutes away in the same house where I grew up. The wallpaper hasn't changed since the 90s, and neither have they. My dad still believes discipline is love, and my mom still believes silence keeps the peace. I used to visit every Sunday until the emotional math stopped making sense. The small insults left me exhausted for days. Nora is the golden child who never seems to run out of second chances. She goes from job to job and boyfriend to boyfriend, always starting over. My parents call her brave for trying new things. When I pay her rent or pick up her kids from school, they call me responsible. It is funny how the same act can mean charity for one person and obligation for another. When my parents invited me to their 45th anniversary dinner, I wanted to believe it was a truce. My mom's text said, "Just family, nothing fancy." I offered to book the restaurant, a nice steakhouse with private rooms. I even found a company to restore their wedding photo from 1978 and had it framed beautifully. I thought maybe for one night we could all sit at the same table and be on the same side. I didn't realize I was walking directly into a script I had been in since childhood, the one where love had conditions and respect had limits, the night of the dinner. Parker and I arrived 5 minutes early. He wore a little navy blue jacket I had ironed that morning. His hair was combed just the way he likes it. He squeezed my hand as we walked through the heavy glass doors of the steakhouse. It smelled like seared meat and felt expensive. Nora and her family were already there, her husband. Maxwell had a drink in his hand. Their kids were lying on the booth seat, loud and looking at their tablets. Nora turned, smiled just enough to be polite, and said, "Oh, good, you came." She didn't stand up. My mom gave a distracted hug. My dad didn't move at all. No one looked at the gift bag I brought. The restored photo that took weeks to organize sat next to me like a forgotten accessory. I helped. Parker unfolded his napkin. I pointed to the menu and whispered, "You can order whatever you want." He smiled at the chicken strips. It was simple and safe. I was about to signal the waiter when Nora leaned in and slid the bread basket toward Parker. "We didn't order anything for your son," Mom said. "We thought he is too picky to eat anyway." For a second, I thought I heard wrong. Then my dad added naturally, "You should have brought something for him." It wasn't just what they said. It was the ease with which they said it. The tone of people so used to minimizing you that they don't even notice anymore. I looked at my mother. She stared at her water glass as if something very important was floating inside. No one else spoke. Parker's shoulders slumped. He didn't cry. He just stared at the bread as if it would disappear if he touched it. Something inside me broke, but not loudly. It was a silent, firm break. Sitting there, I understood that this table had always been the same. Nora. Getting seconds, and me cleaning up the crumbs. I smiled. Only one word came out. Noted. The sound seemed to echo. Nora had frowned. My dad went back to cutting his meat, but Parker Heso looked at me. He really looked at me, and in his small eyes, I saw it. He understood that his mom wasn't going to take it anymore. I didn't say anything else. I just waited. The waiter returned a few minutes later with his notepad. "Are we ready to order?" he asked. The air at the table felt heavy. I could hear. Parker C. breathing softly beside me. My dad kept cutting his meat, pretending nothing had happened. My mom was scrolling on her phone, and Nora was whispering something to Maxwell. Probably about me. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor with a noise so loud that all conversations in the private room stopped. I spoke calmly and firmly. "Cancel any order that hasn't reached the kitchen yet, and put everything that is already on the way on my dad's bill. After all, it is his anniversary." You could hear a pin drop. The waiter froze. Nora. His jaw dropped. My dad finally looked up. His fork stopped in midair. "And for my son," I continued, "he will want a ribeye medium with truffle fries and a soda. Make it quick, please." The waiter nodded with wide eyes and disappeared. Parker looked at me, unsure if he should smile. I reached out, broke a breadstick in two, and gave him half. "Eat, son," I whispered. "We are fine." Maxwell had cleared his throat. Was that really necessary? I looked at him. My gaze was as calm as glass. Yes, it was. No one else spoke. The only sound was the soft clinking of silverware from another table. My uncle, Harrison. My mom's brother let out a low chuckle from the other end of the room. I hadn't realized he and my aunt, Lillian, had joined late and were sitting at the edge. Lillian's eyes met mine, full of pride. She nodded once, as if she had been waiting years to see me do that. The dinner dragged on, slow and tense. Nora's children complained that their food was taking too long. My dad didn't say another word. My mom tried to smile through the tension, but her voice cracked every time she spoke. When the bill arrived, the waiter handed it directly to my dad. His face turned red, but he didn't argue. As we stood to leave, I reached into the gift bag and took out the framed wedding photo. It was beautiful, in sepia tones, with the two of them smiling as if the world was just beginning. I placed it carefully on the table. "Happy anniversary," I said quietly. Then I took Urs, Parker's hand, and we walked out. Outside, the night air was cold against my skin. Parker squeezed my hand. "Mom?" "Yes?" He looked up, small and serious. "You weren't scared?" I smiled. "No, son. I was just tired." By the time I tucked Parker into bed that night, my phone was lit up with activity. Calls from my mom, missed video calls from Nora, and a long voicemail from my dad. I didn't listen to any of them. I knew exactly what they would say. "You embarrassed us. You made a scene. You ruined our dinner." For the first time, I didn't care. I poured a glass of water, sat on the couch, and let the silence settle. The house felt quiet and safe. No one talking over me, no one telling me what I should have done. Then the phone vibrated again. A text from Nora. "You owe Dad for dinner. It was 24,000 pesos. Pay your share." I looked at it for a long minute and typed one word. Noted. I didn't press send. I didn't need to. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. I opened it and saw my parents and Nora standing on the sidewalk. My dad held an envelope. My mom's lips were pressed so tight they looked white. Nora had her arms crossed and wore sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. "Can we come in?" my mom asked, already starting to enter. I didn't answer, just stepped aside. Parker. was sitting on the couch pretending to play his game. He looked up, met my eyes, and looked back down. He didn't need to see this, but he had lived enough of it to know how it worked. My dad slammed the envelope on the kitchen counter. "This is the bill from last night. You agreed to pay half, and you didn't." I leaned against the counter. "Actually, I didn't agree to that. I offered to organize, and you turned it into a public humiliation. That bill is yours." "You embarrassed the whole family," Mom said, her voice shaking. "In public." "Camilla, people were watching." Nora cut in sharply. "You are delusional. Everyone is talking about it. You looked crazy." I let out a low laugh. "Crazy? You called my son invisible. Maybe that is what crazy looks like to people who can't stand to look in a mirror." Nora opened her mouth to speak, but my uncle... Harrison's truck pulled up outside. I had called him 15 minutes earlier and simply said, "They are here." He just replied, "We are coming." When he and my aunt, Lillian, walked in, the atmosphere in the house changed. My mom's face fell. My dad narrowed his eyes. Harrison nodded at me. "Everything good?" "Perfect," I said. Lillian went straight to the counter, looked at the envelope, and then at my parents. "Did you really come to collect money from your daughter after what happened?" "This isn't your business," my mom said immediately. Harrison crossed his arms. "It is when you keep pretending one child is worth more than the other." Nora were scoffed. "Oh, please, are we starting with poor Camilla, the perfect?" I turned to her with a steady voice. "Do you know I have paid your rent for almost a year? I covered your electricity bill. I bought your kids Christmas presents. You never said thank you. You just said you would pay me back soon." Harrison slid a stack of papers onto the table, photocopies of payments and transfers. I hadn't told him I was keeping them, but Lillian had suggested months ago that I document everything. Nora went pale. "You kept records." "I keep receipts," I said, "for people who forget how much they take." My mom raised a trembling hand. "Enough. This is a private family matter." Lillian intervened with a calm but firm tone. "Then start acting like a family." No one spoke. Even Parker looked up from the couch. I took the envelope from the counter and opened it. Inside was the restaurant bill for 24,000 pesos. At the bottom, in nice handwriting, it said, "Pay your share. Camila." I took 12,000 pesos in cash out of my wallet. I put it on the counter. "Here is half, not out of guilt, but out of pettiness. I sleep better knowing you didn't keep everything." My dad's face turned red. "You are being disrespectful." "No," I said. "I am being final." I slid the rest of the papers toward them, proof of every payment I had made to Nora. Screenshots of messages, even a note from the school counselor confirming Parker was fine after a concern they had raised. My mom lost all color in her face. My dad clenched his jaw. Nora-san was shaking. "You are pathetic." Nora-fan said, her voice cracking. "You drag everyone down because you can't stand not being the favorite." I stepped closer. "You were always the favorite. Nora-B, you just confused it with love." The room fell silent. Harrison nodded once. "We are done here." I walked to the door, opened it, and waited. It took them a few seconds, but finally they walked out one by one. First my dad muttering, then my mom with wet eyes. Finally, Nora, throwing looks of hate. When the door closed, I locked it and rested my forehead against the wood. For a moment, I just stood there breathing. Then my phone vibrated again. A voicemail from an unknown number. I played the message. "This is Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous report about your son, Parker. We would like to schedule a home visit." I froze. By the time they knocked on the door a couple of hours later, I had cleaned every surface of the house. I checked the fridge twice and organized. Parker's room. The two women at the door were professional and calm. They asked questions, looked around, and smiled at Parker's drawings on the fridge. Before leaving, one of them said quietly, "It is clear this was a misunderstanding. You would be surprised how often family does this kind of thing." I wasn't surprised. Not anymore. That night, I gathered everything: copies of payments, messages, photos, and a letter I had found months ago in a box in the garage. It was in my mom's handwriting, dated about 35 years ago. "I don't think I will ever connect with this second daughter. I am too tired to try." I read the last line over and over until my vision blurred. That letter wasn't meant for me to find, but it explained everything. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Audrey, a friend of Lillian. We filed a formal cease and desist against my parents and Nora, citing harassment and the false report. Audrey was fast, efficient, and furious on my behalf. A week later, another letter arrived at my door, this time from their lawyer. They were formally requesting visitation rights as grandparents, claiming I was denying them access to Parker's house out of spite. Audrey read it, smiled sideways, and said, "They have no case. Family law doesn't support them here, but let's make sure they regret trying." We submitted a full response with all the evidence attached: the file from social services marked as unfounded, the trail of payments, and that old letter from my mom. 3 days later, the court dismissed their request. When I told C.T. Parker, he just nodded. "So they can't bother us anymore?" "No, son," I said. "Not anymore." He smiled, small but real. That afternoon, watching him color at the table, I understood that what I did hadn't been revenge. It was a rescue from a family that confused loyalty with obedience and love with control. After the court dismissed their petition, silence finally settled like clean air after a storm. No calls, no messages, just stillness. I changed the locks that same week and updated my will, naming Uncle S. Harrison and Aunt Lillian as legal guardians for Parker. If anything ever happened to me, it felt strange but liberating, like cutting a rope that had been digging into my wrists for years. Maxwell. Nora's husband sent a single text message 2 days later. It was a screenshot of a bank transfer for half the rent I had covered for them. No apology, no words, just numbers. A few minutes later, another message arrived. "I am done with her. Take care of yourself." I looked at it for a while before deleting it. It wasn't worth the space on my phone. None of them were. When I saw my mom at the supermarket a week later, she looked smaller, older. She didn't say anything, just stood in the produce section pretending to compare apple prices. I walked right past her. For the first time in my life, I didn't stop to make her feel comfortable. At home. Parker was on the terrace reading. The sunset painted his face orange and gold. "You look different," he said quietly. "I am," I replied. "I stopped trying to fix things I didn't break." He smiled, leaned on my shoulder, and kept reading. The air was still and peaceful, and for the first time, no one else had the power to ruin it. A few weeks later. Parker and I drove north to camp by a lake, just the two of us. We set up a tent, roasted marshmallows, and watched the fire crackle against the night. The stars looked infinite, untouched by everything we had left behind. Parker turned to me, his voice soft. "You look lighter, Mom." I smiled, watching the flames reflect in his eyes. This is what freedom feels like. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just free. If you have ever had to draw a line with your family to protect your peace, tell me in the comments where you are listening from, because I know we are not alone.